the public forum side of things, and I understand that we have a presentation of a petition. Given that this is to do with the long-term plan process, it wouldn't be normal to allow this to happen, but there's an incredible amount of trouble gone to bring the petition to council today, so I would like to invite Lynn Wiggins, Vesta Boswell, Malcolm Farrell and Ngāri Fife to come forward and take the public participation stand, and over to you. Oh, and I should make one point actually before you begin, and that is that we have been talking as a council about how we structure the process of hearing submissions on the long-term plan. And it's probably not a normal process, but we've already scheduled Saturday the 16th of May for the council to come to Brighton. We haven't got the exact venue, so it's either going to be at Roy Stokes or it'll be up at North New Brighton at the Memorial Hall there. So we are going to be coming to you to give the people of New Brighton and the surrounding areas an opportunity to have a say on the long-term plan. So over to you.
Yes, I'm aware of that, and thank you, and I think that's great progress. The thing is that the issue of the South Brighton Holiday Park, which was usually known as the South Brighton Motor Camp, it's been in existence for 70 years. In March of this year, when the draft long-term plan popped up, somebody in the press actually noticed that there was an item there that said that the state of the camp was precarious and that it would probably close during 2015. That person contacted the lessees of the camp, and that went on to us, of course, and we promptly got together a little organisation of the residents and supporters. Several things are at issue here. The information that, or total lack of information that went into this figure in the draft long-term plan of $2.3 to $3 million to remediate the land, buildings and substructure, there had actually been no land report done, so that could not really be a factor. In the last few weeks, the lessees of the camp have had a geotech report done, the result of which is in this document. The council were to come and visit the camp on Tuesday, but due to inclement weather that didn't happen. So the document that had been prepared by the lessees for the information of the councillors, I actually delivered that by hand on Tuesday afternoon. So hopefully some of you have read that and are aware of the detailed issues at stake. So there is no cost for remediating the land. One of the ablution blocks, yes, is severely damaged. The other ablution block is at 34% of the necessary 37% of being able to be used, which seems a bit nitpicking, especially as a result of that. The ablution block was closed.
Excuse me, where's that coming from? Oh, thank you.
And probably a great deal of money was spent in putting temporary ablution blocks, which have been there for the last 2 or 3 years now. Okay, so there's been 6 weeks on behalf of the group that got together and all their supporters of lobbying council. I mean, most of you will have received emails from us in some form. We've been to many meetings, and we have done a great deal of sitting outside supermarkets and talking to people and getting 6,680 people signing our petition to support us in keeping the camp open. At some of the meetings we've been to, there has been a feeling put through to us that it was up to us, i.e. the lessees and supporters of the camp, to come up with viable and alternative solutions to the closing of the camp. I feel quite strongly that it's actually up to the council to come up with a valid reason for actually closing it. The ablution blocks and buildings were already on pre-earthquake plan for upgrading and or replacing, so that's not an extra cost. There is insurance involved in this whole thing, and we hope that it won't sort of just disappear into a large hole. It's not been settled yet. The infrastructure, the sewerage and water supply, is shared by the adjacent South Brighton Tennis Club. For the camp to be lumbered with the total cost of this is unrealistic, so that should be split in half. That again cuts the thing. If you look in the back of this document, you will find that the estimated 2.3 to 3 million can actually be cut down quite reasonably to about $275,000. Okay. Sorry, I've lost my thing. Yeah. The people who have been using the camp for the last 70 years have, in the past, mainly been New Zealand people. As we were gathering our signatures on our petition, many people, particularly older people, said, oh, we used to go and camp there when I was a kid and Dad would go to work from there. This still happens. This still happens through the summertime. But also, there are 10,000 visitor nights, mainly of foreign tourists that come through that camp every year. And earlier in the summer season, the camp had to close 3 times because the camp was full. Yeah, and they managed to do this and keep it open and keep it viable on limited temporary ablution and laundry and kitchen accommodation. The lessees of the camp, unfortunately, had previous arrangements to be in London for a 40th birthday party, so they cannot be here to represent themselves at the moment. But as a resident of 10 years standing in the camp, I can assure you that these people have done a magnificent job in maintaining the camp. Even though in the past, pre-earthquake, they have tried to do some things to enhance the camp and have dug deeply into their own pockets to do so. Since the earthquake, they have had no formal lease. They have been running on a month-to-month basis, and despite the fact they could have walked away from that at a month's notice, they have kept it going. They've kept it going incredibly well. There are 20 long-term families living there long-term. At the moment, there are 8 families living there while their houses are being repaired or renovated. Yeah. There are people moved in a couple of weeks ago. They live in Rocking Horse Road. They need temporary accommodation for a year. They cashed in their accommodation allowance, bought themselves a fabulous big caravan, and they're there for 12 months, and they're loving it. The whole concept of closing down something that has been and still is such an amazing asset to the community and to the city. Find another seaside motor camp. There isn't one. The only one near Christchurch. People talk about Spencer Park. Yeah, go there. Every time it rains, their sewage comes back up their pipes. So I've heard. Anyway, following on about the lessees of the camp, I think it's very important. Let me backtrack, sorry. As a result of all the work that the supporters group have done over the last 6 or 8 weeks, the council have been in dialogue with the lessees of the camp. And as a result of this, both the lessees and the appropriate parts of the council are going to go away, come back together and work out ways of dealing with the whole issue. As a result of this, there's some concern that if the camp is fixed to whatever level, and there has been no formal lease for the last 4 years, that the council would then feel obliged to tender the lease. There can be exceptional circumstances, which I'm absolutely positive this earthquake has been, whereby the council can override this, and the current lessees, the standing lessees at the time of the finishing of the lease, should be allowed to take over. And I think that would be a very, very important thing to do. I think it would be cruel and unfair and pretty stupid to not let the current people who have held on through the last 4 years continue to do so. Right, here we have 6,680. 30. Oh, lots anyway. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I know it's outside of the normal procedures. And if anybody would like to ask us any questions?
Well, we won't take questions this time, but as I say, we'll be coming out to Brighton on the 16th. And we'll have a good conversation then. I'm a lot more familiar with this than perhaps others realise as the former Member of Parliament for the area. I know the issues very well, and I know the issues around requirements around procurement policies, which might need to be reviewed, but we can deal with those too. But when we come out, we'll have a much better basis for a dialogue rather than to see it just as a pure you tell us what you think and we'll just soak it in and then make a decision. I think we should have a good dialogue about what the options are.
I'm really pleased that our efforts have brought us to that place where we are in dialogue with the council.
That's great. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. And could I now invite John Stringer to come forward?
Good morning, councillors.
Good morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is John Stringer. I own and operate Safeguard Security at Restart Mall, and we run the Christchurch City Ambassador Program, which greets the cruise boat tourists and visitors to the city on the buses and any visitors to Christchurch in the CBD.
And you do a fabulous job.
Oh, thank you.
You've even greeted me on occasion.
Well, that's the whole point of it, really, is to be a smiley face for the CBD and people, and to give visitors to our city a pleasant experience despite everything we've been through. I want to talk this morning about the homeless issue, which Shelley Robinson alluded to in the paper during the week. She identified perhaps 23 people who are our homeless community in the city. I would suggest it's a little bit larger than that, depending on how you define homeless. We look after Restart for the private landowners, the Restart the Heart Trust. We look after their buildings and the land, but more importantly, we manage the public relationship with the homeless people, the antisocial elements that creep back into the CBD, and any issues that arise out of that public interface with anybody coming into the area. So we are there all day and all night through till 6 a.m. the following morning. So we have a very good handle on the issues that confront the CBD. Over the last several years, my staff and I have built very substantial relationships with the homeless. And Shelley Robinson alluded to the issues in the paper, and I acknowledge Deputy Mayor Vicky Buck's comments this morning in the paper about what council might do. The antisocial aspects of this whole relationship are quite substantial. I won't go through a long litany of issues that we deal with the homeless people. And we do have some sympathy for them, but on other occasions, no sympathy at all. Many of the homeless in the CBD area are there by choice. A lot of these kids come from good homes, but they've been kicked out of the homes by their grandparents or their parents or their friends, or they've been kicked out of homeless shelters and facilities because of drug, alcohol and synthetic cannabis abuse issues, mental health issues, dishonesty crimes, various attitudinal problems. What I want to suggest this morning is I'd be really interested in working with any councillors interested in perhaps exploring the possibility of not just addressing this issue from a shelter perspective. It really is not just about shelter. It's about intervening in these kids' lives, and we've homed and housed some of these kids, got them into work, but managing them on a case-by-case basis to address the issues that are preventing them getting into meaningful work and into meaningful accommodation. My view is that we could work together to produce some sort of temporary facility, which is an intervention sort of facility, which might be something like decommissioned buses set in a quadrangle or a marquee or an abandoned warehouse where we could fit some bunks, but where we had something like a camp mum or a camp dad who managed this 23, 25 number of people and look at the issues that are relevant to them on a case-by-case basis. What are the issues that relate to you personally that prevent you from washing dishes at McDonald's? Or in exchange for 8 hours shelter a night and a hot meal, which would get you through the day, could you come and help us remove some of the sediment from some of the riverbanks or areas in our city? Perhaps we could teach you to build rock walls, even go into private areas and clean up some of these empty sites. Weeding, work at the Sticks Mill wetlands. There is so much that these homeless people could do, which would give them a sense of self-esteem in exchange for some support from us as a council and as business people. And we could provide them with food and shelter, but intervene in the problems that are putting these kids on the streets for some of them longer than 10 years. There is a systemic problem in these kids' lives. I invite them and encourage them into work all the time. I spoke to a girl this week who's working Manchester Street, and I said, look, what's to stop you? You're a fit, healthy young woman. What's to stop you cleaning dishes at McDonald's? She said, well, I don't want to do that. And that is often the problem we hit and confront, is that these kids simply do not want to work or are uninterested in working or are unable to work because they have difficulty socialising with people or listening to a boss or receiving guidance or advice. So I think it's more than a shelter issue for the small group of people in our city. I think we can solve this problem, but we do need to intervene, and I'd like to explore options with any councillors who would be interested in having this conversation further. So thank you, Madam Chair and Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for your time and letting me speak to you today.
Thank you, and thank you for your insight too. I think that, I mean, I'm immediately thinking of who I want to put you in touch with, because there's another organisation that's dealing with kids that are on the margins, and you are absolutely right. Treating the symptom doesn't solve the problem. Yeah, it's the kind of ambulance at the top of the cliff rather than
That's right.
I mean, the fence at the top of the cliff rather than the ambulance at the bottom. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. That's great.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, these sessions are now thoroughly worthwhile after hearing something like that. Incredibly uplifting. Right. Do you want to refer that to the Chief Committee? I don't know. Do you want us to refer that issue to your committee?
I think that would be good.
Yeah? Yeah. Because I've got some ideas about who would be a really good connection for those people. So we'll get John's details off him,
and that would be fantastic.
And you could invite him there. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Right. The next item on the agenda is deputation by appointment, but we don't have any of those.